Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining United Way of Northern Utah's Nonprofit Connection to cover part 2 of our grant writing session. We have Kate Badeau here, who is going to lead us through all sorts of great information that is kind of building upon our first session, but you won't be lost if you didn't get a chance to watch that one. It is available on our website if you'd like to take a minute to watch that. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to Kate to get started on her presentation. Thank you.
Well, good morning. I glad to see some faces back here and some familiar faces and also new people. And so this is really exciting. What I really love is that I've done this work for quite a bit of time, but with these sessions that we've just done recently, I've seen a lot of new people here in the room. So I'm very, very excited about this. And if you have been in the presentations before, I have changed some things up, made some new templates, and you're all going to get access to all of those. So I've been grant writing now for a long time, probably, I don't know, since like 2005, I guess, maybe even earlier than that. And it's one of the things that I love to do. I love to be able to basically, it's a persuasive essay that you're going to persuade somebody to believe in your mission, your organization, and to help you achieve it. And so I think it's really exciting to be able to do that. And I always, when people ask me about grant writing, what I tell them is if you can answer essay questions really well when you were in elementary school, high school, college, then you're going to be, that's basically what grant writing is. It's answering essay questions and being able to research and know who your audience is. So we're going to talk today a little bit about, I'm going to share my screen here. And I would do introductions, and I feel really horrible that I'm not, but we only have a small amount of time. And so I want to make sure that you all get everything that you came for. So here is, does everybody see my screen? I'm going to go into the, let's see, we're going to start. Where's my presentation here? My view and slideshow. Okay. Okay, here we go. I always start with this slide here that these are some tips for success, and success requires nonprofit knowledge, preparation, and organizational skills. And so in order to be a good grant writer, in order to be able to get your funding, you have to know the organization that you're writing for. You have to prepare, and that means you have to have all of your documents ready. You need to have your data ready. You need to know your the deadlines. You need to know your funder. All of those things are part of that preparation. And then the last one is organizational skills. And so you need to be able to have everything organized in a way that you can find it pretty easily. So I just want to start today. Here's the agenda. We're going to review some things from part 1, just as a just to kind of refresh our memories, answer any questions that you might have about part 1. We're going to practice writing your executive summary, which is something that we did in part 1, but I actually created a template for you to hopefully that'll help make it easier. And we're going to look at budgets a little bit. We're going to look at the data and how do you create your own data dashboard so that you have all the key pieces of data that you need in order to submit your grants and tell your story. And then we're going to spend most of the time on this evaluation plan and making it something that's a quality evaluation plan, but also it's easy to implement and something that will help be your template as you implement your grants. And so it's all those things in one. And then we're going to talk a little bit, if we have time, about partnerships and letters of support. Okay, so in the first episode of this series, we talked about where to find grants. And actually, I think Abby and I, well, no, it was Carol Bedome and I, that's who it was. It was Carol and I, we were working with somebody just recently, and we realized we could actually do a whole session on just grant and foundation seeking tools, because there are many of them. And I said Abby, because we talked about, we're like, oh, we have to tell Abby this, oh, we have to tell Abby that. So Abby's here so she could hear it. So yeah, United Way of Northern Utah, they have the foundation directory online. and you can schedule an appointment with the Nonprofit Connection to go in there and use that tool. It's an amazing tool. I use it all the time. I also use a tool called Grant Watch, and Grant Watch is pretty affordable, and it gives you a wide array of grants that you can look at on a monthly basis, and it'll let you really go in and hone in on all the different like topics. So if you're looking at different topics, you can do that. Instrumental is an amazing website, but it's very expensive, and it really is for one organization. You can really do a deep data dive. Candid, GuideStar, and Charity Navigator, those are great. And you can look at different foundations and see, you know, just different things about them. They're a lot like the foundation directory online. Cause IQ, I have not necessarily used that one quite a bit, but it is one. GrantStation I use as well. And what's interesting is that Carol and I, when we were meeting, and it was with Frederick from United Way, we looked at Foundations Online, Grant Watch, and GrantStation. And even though there were several grant opportunities that were similar across all of them, they weren't exclusive. And so there were 3 or 4 that we found through GrantStation that were not on Grant Watch, and vice versa, and then Foundations Online. And so that's why I actually really love to use those. 3 are my favorites that I use. The last over here, Double the Donation, is great because that's more of corporate giving. So if you look on this side, these are more of your corporate foundations where you can find support. A lot of corporations will have foundation arms, and so this is a great place on these 3 to look for that. And the last one, I always tell everybody, subscribe to Abby's Nonprofit Connection monthly newsletter and share that out with your friends. So I will go through all of these sources here, and I will curate a list for you, because quite honestly, if you're looking at all of these sources, I say it's like kind of going down a rabbit hole, but there are hundreds, and like 400 or 500 that opportunities that will come up for you. So what I do is I go through all of them, and I put together kind of a neat list of opportunities for about 6 weeks to 2 months. This last month we worked on just ones that had open rolling deadlines, so that you could get a get an idea of those that are open all year long. Are there any questions about that from our first session? Okay. We also talked about required documents. So this goes into preparation as well. So whenever you're writing a grant application, make sure you have the most, and I highlighted on here what your required documents are. So your financial statements, your 990 tax return, your budget, board members' affiliations, your IRS determination letter. Note to the IRS determination letter, several of them, like the ones that I work with, a lot of them are very old. You can actually request an updated nonprofit IRS determination letter. I know somebody like the Swanson Foundation, they want to see an updated verification letter that's within 5 years. And I think the reason they want that is because they want to make sure that you still have nonprofit status, because if your organization is 30 years old, and they want to make sure that you are still in good standing, not that it's just the original one, but you're in good standing today. The assigned W-9 is always important to have. And I wouldn't fill out the thing at the top of it where it says who it's going to, just make it a blank one. And then you have to have your most recent profit and loss statement, and that needs to be at least quarterly. All of those are really important for you to get funding. And it actually shows that you are organized to your funder. So we also spoke about knowing your funders' priorities and being able to speak to them in your application. Each one of these funding sources has their own mission, and their board of directors allocates funding to other organizations to help them achieve that broader mission. So you want to make sure that your organization aligns with the mission of the funding source. And so I can give you just an example, and sometimes we try to stretch it. Sometimes it works, most times it doesn't. So the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity recently released a grant, and it was to increase employees into these high need careers that they had. And so if you're working, let's say, in elementary art programs, and you want to apply for that grant, the likelihood that you're going to get that grant is super small, right? Because even though you can argue the fact that Children who participate in art lessons are more likely to attend school more often, have better grades. They can build collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, and communication skills, which are all prerequisites, right, to being a great employee, or the soft skills. The likelihood that you're going to get that funding is small because the logic is there, but they really are looking for something that's very directly related into employment. So that's a great example of that. And even you might have an amazing program, but if it's not a fit to what they need to spend the money for their priorities, then you're not going to get funding. So I created a Google Doc, and this is all hyperlinked. So if you click on the Google Doc hyperlink here, we created a way for you to actually look at at your funding sources, or as you're prospecting your new ones, just to go through and describe how well your organization aligns with it, your project, and then rate it on a scale of 1 to 5. And this way it'll help you prioritize how you spend your time. And when you speak to your board as well, it will let them know if you have a 1 on this and they still want you to submit it and you don't get it, you can at least, say, well, the likelihood was really small that we were going to get this, or our alignment is really small. So it just kind of helps you prioritize the work that you do. And then over here, I just listed some of the most common grant providers in our area. And most of them are private foundation grants, but there are a couple like Union Pacific, Dominion Energy, Bank of Utah, or Bank of America, Rocky Mountain Power. Those are all corporate. And so there's a difference between corporate and private foundations. But what's similar is they all have applications, they all have a mission that they have to fund to, and they all have a board of directors that they report to. Okay. So this is kind of basically what we just talked about, was making sure your project fits their grant purpose. And when you do, we've done a couple grant makers forums, and we'll hopefully do another one maybe in the spring. But when you look at the grant makers forum, they said that one of the biggest reasons that grants are not funded is because the request does not fit the funder's purpose. And RAMP is another example of that: recreation, arts, museums, and parks. And let's say that you're a recreation facility and you are organization, and you want to see if you can get funding for your organization, and you have this great soccer program and you need to buy cleats and whatever for inner city kids, low income, to participate. No matter how fantastic your program is, you're not going to get funding from RAMP because it only funds recreational facilities. And so that's why it's important to really spend some time and look at who your funders are and what they fund. Okay. Another thing that we talked about too was making sure that you can articulate how your project fits into their mission. And then also that if you are going after a corporate sponsorship, it's really, I would say it's important for you to, especially if it's something that has a local branch here, just make an appointment with your local branch, with the manager, with if you know an employee there. Somehow, if you can get known to them who your organization is, that's so important because they get a lot of requests. And that's what we all think. We all love our organizations, but I can't remember, Abby, aren't there like 900 in Weber County? I mean, there are so many. So as amazing as we think our organization is, everybody has an amazing organization. And so you're more likely to fund something that it's this whole idea of social connectedness and social capital. So if they know you, if they trust you, if you have if you go the extra mile, and you're going to stand out to them, and that's really important. And then they like this whole idea of social responsibility, especially with this new age of workers, is extremely important. So they want to be able to have their employees engaged in their mission, or in your mission, or in volunteerism. And a lot of organizations, when you go back to that double the donation and give butter, a lot of those organizations will match their employees' donations to you. And or if their employees donate, they will actually give you money. So I know Walmart does it, Kohl's does it. I think it's Allstate that does it. So there's several that if you have a project that their employees come and volunteer at, they will give you a grant for that. And then looking at your credit unions, insurance companies, investment banking, large corporations, and utility companies, all of those will have grant applications. So we talked about too what the most common grant questions are, and it really is your description, your mission, kind of what we call an executive summary of your organization. And then I just gave you some examples of grant competitions where that is basically the first question or a variation of it. And it really sets the tone of your application. And if your mission is super short and it asks you to tell the mission of your organization, just tell the mission of the organization, and it's super short and they give you 250 words, feel free to add in there your vision, your core values, just a little bit more so they can get to know you a little bit more. Okay, so here is activity number 1, and I am going to give you guys time to just fill this out. So the nonprofit organization, which would be your name, and I'm going to see, let me just come here and I'm going to drop this in the link, Control C, and I'm going to put this into the chat. So you can go in and see that. You can go in and open it up and you can copy it to create your own. If everybody goes in at the same time and just uses that one, it'll all look the same. But if you want to go in and even if you just fill in kind of the blanks here. So your organization was established as a 501c3 how many years ago? So if you have a piece of paper, let's write that down. And then the next fill in the blank is to directly confront the issue of blank. So why was your organization founded? And then the next sentence. The next sentence is your community. And so I wasn't sure what everybody's community was on this call. So it could be the Ogden community, it could be Weber, Davis, Northern Utah, Box Elder, Southern Utah, who knows, right? But you describe your community then. So that's what last time I asked you to create your executive summary. This time I'm providing you with this template. So whatever your community is, and then define it. It is rural, urban, suburban community? And then I give a reference point a lot to Salt Lake City because people are familiar, especially on the national level or regional level, with Salt Lake. So are you north, south of Salt Lake, west of Salt Lake? Are you in Salt Lake, which is the largest city or the capital in the state of Utah? Then I like to insert a data piece here that shows the need. So whatever your community is. So I like to say Ogden is an urban community, an urban industrial community located 40 miles north of Salt Lake in the midst of a revitalization to brand itself as an outdoor and arts mecca of the West. That's off the top of my head. You can tell I write it a lot. But you tell that data, or you say that or Ogden, it depends on who I'm writing to as well. Ogden is a minority majority community with 3 of the top highest intergenerational poverty rates in our state. And 100% of its schools earning the title, earning free and reduced lunch Title I schools. So whatever you're trying to tell that story, that's where you put that piece of data in here. I'm just setting my timer a little bit so that I can make sure that I give you just a little bit of time for each of these. To write down some ideas. And if you don't know what the data is right now, we're going to talk about that in a minute. So you can just like right now insert, like you want to put free and reduced lunch data, poverty data, demographic data, income data, it just depends on your organization, because the data that you put in there is going to describe the need for your organization. So just make sure that the data pieces that are in there are going to directly correlate to why your organization was formed, right? And then the next section is we work tirelessly to fulfill our mission of, and that's where you put your mission. And most of you know your mission, so I'm not going to, so you've got your mission. And then the next one is by. So right here, I'm going to give you about 20 seconds, 30 seconds. 30 seconds is what I put on my timer. And I want you to list how do you fulfill your mission? What are your strategies, your projects, your services that you provide? Oops, I did not mean to do that. I was trying to open up another document for you that I'm going to use in a second. Okay. After that, oops, let me go back to previous. We have our proposed, our proposed project, whatever the name of your project is, or our grant request will directly contribute to our mission by addressing our community's needs. Its objectives include. So we're going to talk a little bit about the objectives of your proposed program later, but basically, what is it that you're going to do with this funding that you get? And bullet point a couple of those things right now. Okay. The next part. I'll make sure my alarm. I keep hitting start and it doesn't go anywhere. I have to press it harder, I guess. Okay, the total cost for the implementation, or if it's your budget, if you're asking for operating money, so you can say our total operating budget is, or if you're asking for a specific program or project, put that number in there, or an estimation of it. And then of this amount, blank has already been committed. So if you already have, and it doesn't have to be a number, it could be 50% has been committed. You could put a dollar number in there. You could, if you're not quite sure, you can put the majority. Or if it's brand new, you can say, we've just started raising funding, you know, of this amount. You know, we are just initializing our ask. And then your investment. So how much, a lot of them, like the ECHOS grant will ask you, how much are you asking us for? Your investment of will complete the necessary funding needs to implement our project. So how much are you going to ask them for? And then right here's the template. So you can always go back to that. And it's online. Oops. if I looked at the template that I shared with you, I still need to add this insert the data piece here with the location. So I will make sure that I update that for you all. Okay. So I talked to you about data, right? So in this little summary statement, we talked about a little bit about the data. You want to share just a little bit of data because it tells the why. We always say start with the why, don't start, with the what, right? So don't start with, if you look at even when I talk about here, it says why we were created. We start with the why. We were created to confront the issue of what in our community. And then we back it up with a little bit of statistics. That starts with the why. Then we tell the what, which is what our mission statement is. And then the how is how we're going to do it. And then and then I was going to say totally. And then you go into the objectives are more specific, and it's going to say how you're going to measure your success. So when we look at this here, what data proves the need for your organization or purpose? So these are the common data points that I see that you can collect to talk about the need for your program. Household income, single parent families, health indicators, your physical health, your mental health, the social determinants of health, crime rates, education data, alcohol, tobacco, other drugs, suicide, depression rates, homelessness, court-involved families, youth, ACEs, your adverse childhood experiences, employment rates, unemployment rates, economic forecast. All of those data points are really valid points to use, but you don't want to use all of those. So we're going to talk a lot about that today. And it's, you can see kind of this common thread through it. So I want right now, if you were looking at this and you were talking to your neighbor, and I was looking to see, I don't think I was going to try to put you all into chat rooms, but it doesn't give me the ability to put you in chat rooms. So I think there's enough people here that we might just be able to share out. But what I wanted to do is I want you to look at this list, or maybe a list that you have. And if you were just talking to your neighbor and they asked you why, what data points or what need does your organization serve our community? And you were only going to choose 3 data points that you could share. I don't want to know what the data points are, the actual numbers, but what 3 data points would you share or want to talk about as critical or essential to somebody understanding the need for your organization? So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds just to think about those, and then we're just going to share those out. Let's share out. I don't know who wants to go first, but I'd love to have some volunteers. I'd like to get at least maybe out of the 50% of you to volunteer. What 3 data points do you think would be essential that you would share? Okay, Carol? Oh, you're on mute.
I would use household income, single parent families, and education.
Perfect. Kara?
We're a little music festival, so ours is to share the experience of live music, talented artists. We have a variety of contests for.
So in your community, what data points would you share? Not the what you do, but why it is needed. So think about that. If you were going to describe your community and have some data points that would share the need for your organization. So think about that for a second. We're going to come back. So
Okay.
we're going to talk about the what in a minute. So we're talking about the why. Who else would like to share what data points you're going to share? It's a little tricky. That's why we're going through this, because I'm trying to shift your thought process a little bit to strengthen the applications just a little bit. So Melanie, is that you?
Yeah. We got household income, ACE, and single parent families.
Perfect. Who else? Okay, Louis or Luis?
Luis. I got household income, homelessness, and ACE.
Perfect. And what's your organization?
Family Promise of Ogden.
Okay, perfect. And I already know Melanie's, right? Grandparents? Yep. Okay, who else? At least one more, and then we're going to go back to Kara. Okay, Dana or Dana?
It's Dana, trying to start my video, sorry. We are Wasteless Solutions. We're a nonprofit all about food waste. And so one that's not on here that we use is the number, 600,000 tons of food go to waste in Utah every year. So we quote that. And then food insecurity rates. So really we rely on those two. We have some others, but those are our main ones.
Perfect. And let's go back to Kara. Where's Kara? Let's unmute you. Okay, so you provide a music festival. Where's the music festival?
It's in Wallsburg, Utah. We promote community and family union through music.
So tell me about the community. Where is that where is that specifically? What county is that in?
It's in Wasatch County. It's on the northeast corner of Deer Creek Reservoir, 60 miles west of Heber City.
Okay, so
very-
that gives you a little bit. So I would put that in there of where you're that it's located in a rural community, and giving that so people know exactly where it is. So I wouldn't put where it was located in relation to Salt Lake, but where it is located in relation to Heber City.
Yeah.
And I would probably even include maybe some data on income levels, or what else can anybody else think of what she should put in there as far as describing her community? Because this is a rural community, right? And we're always used to urban communities and those statistics, but I would
Right.
think that, yes.
The other thing is we're on the property of the Richard W. Erickson Foundation property, and it's a living museum of cars, tractors, military, hospital, all kinds of memorabilia, which it's a walkthrough Quonset huts where you see all this stuff on display.
Open to the public.
So
And it's
that
open
would
to the
probably
public.
go back into if you in the next section of it, which is when we're talking about like the specific objectives or projects or strategies, I would put that into that sentence right there, where it is located, and then that it is on this living museum. But I would look at trying to get some specific data about your community, the household data, the health indicators, something like, that would show that there's a need in your community, whether it's a health indicator, and usually the indicators are under three, a broad three categories. You have health, you have income, and you have education. And those are the three basic ones that people will quote here. Okay, we're going to go on to the next one. And then, like I said, hopefully this gives you a little bit. So we're looking at the other piece in here that we need to talk about when we create that. So kind of shifting gears from that initial, what we talked about, which was, let me go previous. This is your executive summary. And like I said, in your executive summary, it's super short because you normally have about 250 words or fewer to actually write your executive summary, or what they might ask you is your mission, your background, all that information. So you want to keep it super tight and only talk about some key things. That's where we talk about our location, a little bit about the community, what your mission is, how you achieve your mission, 1, 2, 3 of your big services, what your project will do and your objectives of it, the total cost of the program or your project, if you've already raised some funding, what that looks like, and how much money you're asking them for. This is just talking about what information you probably, those key things that you might want to include about your organization when you're talking about the need for it. The other thing that we're not going to talk about today, because we're not going over the needs section today, is normally that they will ask you to describe the need for your organization in your community, which is another grant question. In that grant question, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to mix this data, number one, with a second set of data. And the second set of data that you're going to go to is, let me see, it comes, so this is where you're going to find all that data. The second set of data, so I want to just show you this. So if you're looking at where do I get this data to support this, these are all hyperlinks in here. And I want to thank some of you added to my hyperlinks the last time we had this session. So that was amazing. This one was a new one, and the DWS annual income and major employers was a new one. So then there was one on the Utah Animal Shelter data, but National Crimes Against Children data. So these are all amazing data sources that can help you prove your need. Let me go back. The other piece of data that you're going to want to be able to have here is going to be your client data. So they're going to want to know, usually in a grant application, so not a grant question, but in a grant application, they ask you what percent they want the demographic breakdown of your organization, your clients that you serve. So their ethnicity or race, their gender, and they ask for LGBTQI now. And so you need to have specific numbers to put into these categories. A lot of times, especially if you're looking at your bank grants, credit unions, insurance companies, credit card companies, they want to know your poverty rates, household income. Those are really important to them because they have federal regulations that they have to adhere to. And that poverty rate and household income rate are really important to them. So it's really important too, because when you're talking about your organization and the need, so you know, in addition to, like I said, you're going to have your charts, but you also have your questions. You want to be able to describe not just your community, but your clients. So in this one here, if you get a little bit more words, a little bit more space, you can describe who your client is in this paragraph as well. Because we need to know, you know, we serve X number of clients a year. 50% of our clients are single parent households, and 75% of their children qualify for free and reduced lunch. So it's really nice for you to be able to have these statistics. So that's why it's important for you to create your own dashboard that has all of these statistics in there. So your community statistics are important. Your client data statistics are important. And these are the client data statistics that are most important. Education, graduation rates, how many are at grade level? Their kids, so are they at grade level for reading, for math? And those are according to your state scores. And then any health data. How many of your clients have a disability? How many of your clients experience depression? Things like that. And then any other are organization specific. So in your data, you have 3 different data. We have the community data. We have the data that's talking about your clients. And these are some other things that you would put in here as well for your data on your clients in your organization. The number of clients served annually, your service area, your average annual dosage, the average cost per person, the average cost that's paid by the person, and anything else. So that still falls under your demographic client data. The third kind of data that you want to find, and I apologize because I don't really have it in here, but we can do a session on this as well, is you want to be able to show like national data or data that proves that your intervention works. So an example of that would be Youth Impact works with 120 youth, high need youth in the Ogden area. 100% of our kids qualify for free and reduced lunch. 70% come from single parent or non-traditional households. And they all attend schools that are 20 points or more below the state average in educational outcomes. That's a pretty brief statement of the need. Multiple research shows that children who attend after-school programs like Youth Impact, and I have the studies to prove it, multiple show that children who attend after-school programs meet their school's attendance rates, are on track for graduation, and they all have higher graduation rates. So that's your third piece of data. So what you want to do is you show your community data, you talk about your client data, and the third piece is what data is there that shows the intervention or what you're doing is going to make a difference. Okay, the next piece is talking about budgets. So we talked last time that budgets were like a bank loan. They tell your story in numbers. It's not just a calculation of revenue and expenses. They communicate how you raise money. And you also need to prove that you are sustainable. You have to have a balanced budget. This is so important. Your income in your budget has to equal your expenses. If it doesn't, you will not get funded. And then make sure that your budget, your grant budget, aligns with your request and aligns with what they will fund. So that goes back to knowing your grantors. You have to know what they will give you money for and what they won't. And they will give you a list most of the time. I'd say 75% of the time, you're going to get a list of allowable expenses and unallowable expenses. You can put an unallowable expense in your budget, but you cannot ask them to fund that piece of it. So this is what a budget will look like. And this is what we created. You have a link to this as well. And there's two pieces to it. This one is the sources. So if you've already asked, you create a list of organizations here, foundations, funding sources, where you're getting your funding from. You say whether they're confirmed or potential and how much. Because I'd say 75% of when you ask for funding, they want to know this list. They want to know it. Because they don't want to fund something that is not, they don't want to give you, if your project is going to cost $50,000 and you ask them for 10,000, they don't want to give you 10,000 unless they know you can get the additional 40. So they won't give you funding if they don't think you're going to raise all the money needed. That's number one. Number two is over on this side of it, which is your project expenses. You need to be able to not just say how much your wages are. I would list them out. So how much is your project director? How much are your instructors? How much are your greeters? How much are your whoever, right? Be able to make sure that you have those there, your fringe benefits, your supplies, any equipment cost, travel, insurance, if you have a facilities expense, if you have any banking fees, any contracted services, mileage can sometimes go up into travel, and then training costs. The other one that's not on here that I would probably put in here for some of you is marketing expenses. So I'm going to make sure I go back in there and add marketing to this because your marketing or your outreach is an expense. And then if you have any evaluation costs or data collection costs, I would add this in here as well. They're not going to give you money if they don't know how you're going to spend your money. It's not a blank check. Writing a grant and getting funding is as much about accountability as it is about your project. They could love your project, but if they don't think that you can spend the money, number one, get all the money, spend the money. And if they don't think that you can track the funding, how it's going to be spent, or know what you're going to spend the money on, then they will not give it to you. So never, ever write a grant until you make your budget first. If you ever work with me, and Abby knows this, the first thing I do is say, what do you want to do? Let's make the budget. Because everything comes back to that budget. Okay, so we're going to shift to evaluations. I met with a representative from the state of Utah, House representative, local representative from the House of Representatives. And he told me that the state of Utah has a huge projected shortfall from what their projection of income was to what they actually, the revenue that they're going to make in 2023. So that tells me a lot of things. Number one, it tells me it's going to be a lot harder to get state funding, right? Number two, it means that our businesses and corporations that we asked funding for didn't make as much money. So if they didn't make as much money, the amount of money that they're going to be able to give us is going to be less. And it also affects our foundations, because our foundations get their money. How a foundation works is they actually have an endowment and they spend a certain percentage of what that endowment is. And it's usually based off of how much money they make in the stock market that year. So I'm saying all of this to you because the difference between getting funding and not getting funding, especially if it's somebody that you've gotten funding from before, is going to be your evaluation. One of the biggest mistakes that we see that nonprofits make is they don't collect the data to show that their project worked or had an impact. And I can tell you, if I'm going to give you money, I want to know what the impact is. It's huge. So why do we have to do an evaluation plan? And what else is the purpose of it? So an evaluation plan explicitly addresses the grant requirements that the funder has established for eligibility. It is a strong evaluation plan will accomplish other tasks as well. One is it will help your team establish a concrete plan and an evaluation schedule. So this will help you transform your evaluation plan into a guiding document for your team to follow once you start implementing whatever you got funding for. And it also then lets you know if your plan fails to meet these thresholds for success. If you've got this plan and you know what you're supposed to reaching for your targets are, you can identify in the middle of the year, after the first quarter and the third quarter, you can identify potential problem areas and make adjustments. Because if you don't make adjustments and you just look at it at the end when your project is, your report is due and you failed, now you have to turn in a project or a report to your funder that says that you gave me $20,000 and it didn't do what I told you it was going to do. They'd rather hear after the first quarter or mid-year say, you gave us this amount of money, our data is showing it's not going to work. We'd rather do this. We think this might be a better option for us. They'd rather hear that than wait to the end. It also is a way to judge the success of your project overall. And it assures good stewardship and the efficient use of grant funds, and it offers accountability, which is respect. It shows that you are respecting your grant source. It addresses the specific grant requirements. And if you are submitting, this is one of my little things here. If you're submitting a project grant, make sure that your project goals are specific to your project. If you have a big organization that does 3 things, make sure that when you're asking for a project, for funding for a project, that the goals that you put in there aren't your big grant goal or aren't your big strategic plan goals. They're just specific to this specific project. Okay, so we do this continuous improvement process. I always like to, if you remember anything, remember that I told you that an annual report is an autopsy. That's all it is. It's an autopsy. It's over. So you give an annual report every year. It's like, okay, what happened? You can't make changes. It doesn't help you. It helps you for the next year, but it's an autopsy of what you've done. I also say, make sure that you use a team approach. It's not just you. Make sure that it's you with your essential partners who are looking at it. It's you with your team of implementers who are doing it, and invite objective eyes to it. I facilitate, I don't know how many continuous improvement processes because I'm objective. And I can look at it from an objective view and facilitate the discussion, because sometimes you have to have crucial conversations. We call them deep data dives, and they should happen at least quarterly. And this is where you make changes. You can never change your scope or your objectives, but you can sure as heck change how you're going to achieve them to make sure that what you're doing works. I always say, name your data collection tools. How are you going to collect the data? We're going to talk about that in a second. Write it down. If it's not written down, it didn't happen. It's all hearsay. So make sure you write it down, and then make sure you share it with your board and your project partners. the good, the bad, what needs to be improved. They will appreciate your transparency. What somebody doesn't want is get to the end and know it didn't make the objectives. Okay, so we use RBA. I am a huge RBA person, results-based accountability. Let me just show you, in fact, right now here in front of me, I have my book. It's open to the pages I'm going to talk to you about. And we're only going to talk a little bit about, it's a huge book. You can see it, not huge, but it's about 150 pages or so. So the first thing that you have to do is choose your key performance indicators. These are the data that measures the impact of your programs and your strategies. They measure both activities and results. The first thing that you have to do is so important is choose your indicators. So that equals, that's your community, and you look at 3 things for this, and I created a worksheet. So your 3 things are your communication power. So the question that you ask is, does the indicator communicate to a broad audience? So same question I asked you at the beginning. If you had to explain the results of your program or your efforts to your neighbor, what 2 to 3 pieces of data would you share? You only get 2 or 3. What 2 or 3 things could you share about your project? What you do that you would share with your neighbor, or to a legislator, or to a funder, or to another nonprofit organization? What are those 3 pieces of data? And we're going to do this activity in just a second. The second question is proxy power, or not question, but second thing that you do is look at your proxy power. Does the indicator that you choose say something of critical importance about all the results? We use the phrase, does it lead the herd? So you only get 2 or 3. It goes back to that same question above about giving your neighbor 2 to 3. What are those indicators that are going to say? So for example, 3rd grade reading. So is a huge indicator of kids being successful, even graduation. So they trace 3rd grade reading all the way up to kids graduating from high school, right? So what indicators? I'm going to collect an indicator on 3rd grade reading to show that I'm getting kids prepared to graduate for high school, because I know 3rd grade reading is a huge indicator of success. The next one is data power. This is so important. That means, can I get the data easily? And can I get the data in a timely fashion? So a big example of this is anybody who collects data on behavior and with youth. Every 2 years, the state of Utah does this thing called the SHARP survey data. And they give the SHARP survey data in January, February. And then we don't get the results until September, October. And it's every 2 years. So if I was writing a data, or I was trying to do some an indicator on behavioral health for kids, the SHARP survey is great, but it's a 1.5 years late when I get the data, right? So that proxy power for the SHARP survey data would put that kind of low on my totem pole. I'd have to figure out some other way to get data for my behavior. And then the next step, that's step 1. And then step 2 is we ask these 3 questions. How much did we do? These are the categories. How well did we do it? And then is anyone better off? So step 1 is you choose your indicators. Make sure you choose 2 to 3 indicators that are going to tell your story. Number 2 is you ask the 3 questions. How much, how well, and is anyone better off? Step 3 is to create a SMART goal for at least 1 to 2 SMART goals for each one of those indicators. So we're going to practice. Oh, this is just a little chart here that kind of shows you effort and effect. We're going to skip that. And I'm going to come straight to this evaluation planning sheet. And I'm going to put this in the chat for you. And this is a really great tool. I just honestly created this as I thought about what I could do to help you. I had something completely different, not completely, but it was a lot different than what this is. So I would choose this one, and you can go in and you can copy this and create your own. But I write the grant maker's mission or their priorities, or what they want, what your mission is. Let me just put this over here. And then forecasting. I love, this is new. This is I kind of always do this, but I did a lot of what they call metacognition. And it's like thinking about how your brain thinks and what you do. So I kind of broke down my steps further for all of you. If we don't implement this project or do something different, what could happen? Because that's part of how you show your need, right? If we don't do this, what would the result be? So you take yourself through that, your mission, your grant maker's mission, your mission. If you don't do the project, what would happen? And then the next part, we come in here. And this goes back to, I wish I could show you both screens up at the same time. What we had just talked about was this. Step 1, step 2, and step 3, right? So we choose our indicators, then we create our performance measurements, and then we craft our SMART goals. So the first one is how much? So I want you to take about 30 seconds, and I want you to think about, first of all, if you didn't implement your project, what would the result be? And take about 30 seconds and just write down a couple of thoughts there. Oh, it's already 12 o'clock. Darn it. We went through all of that so quickly. I am so sorry. We went through all of it. We have no time left, but you have this worksheet now. And this is something that you guys can use on your own to help you through all of it. So this will take you through your proxy power for how much, how well, and you can see that yes or no. Does it have proxy power? Does it have data power? And then this takes you through turning it into a SMART goal. It takes you through all of those steps. And you have the same one for how well, and then you have the same one for better off. So this worksheet hopefully will help you plan to do all of that. This defines what a SMART goal is. We talked about this last time. So this is just a review of that, which is why I skipped it. And there's your practice. So we really did come to the end of it. There just isn't enough time for us to actually do the activities, but you have all the information. Do you have any questions about what we're talking about with this worksheet here with the proxy power and the communication power, proxy power, and data power, because this is all new to you. Hey, no
Um,
questions?
I was gonna ask, would you be able to provide a sample later on?
Yes.
Okay.
I will put the sample on the website so that you can have that. You can definitely do that. And if you want to set another time up where we can practice these, we can do, I'd be very happy to set up another, half an hour. I think if we did an hour, we could do a half an hour, you practice writing them, and then we can work in our groups. And then in our groups, if we go into chat teams, the chat teams, and then I actually have a tool that you can each use to help evaluate like your evaluation section. So you can give each other feedback on that.